Hello everyone, and thank you for coming to my presentation. I am discussing the environmental impact on the Battle of the Bulge, of which you can see two photos here showing US soldiers on a captured German tank and moving into the main region of the battle, the Ardennes forest. The Battle of the Bulge started on the morning of December 16, 1944, when over 200,000 German soldiers launched a surprise attack on the 83,000 soldiers of the US First Army. The First Army had been placed along the Ardennes forest as it was considered a safe region for fresh troops to train, as the German tanks, such as the one in this photo, would be unable to move very effectively to the narrow roads in the trees. In the span of a week, thousands of US soldiers were captured, and the American lines were pushed back 50 miles. However, Allied reinforcements quickly poured in by land and air and stopped the German assault before gradually taking back the lost territory over the next month. Approximately 1.2 million soldiers fought in the Battle of the Bulge across an area spanning over 500 square miles. The Ardennes forest, which consists primarily of spruce trees, was the main region of fighting and stretched over the French, Belgian, Luxembourg, and German borders. Hills, fields, swamps, and roadways were also part of the environment in which the battle took place. My presentation is divided into my thesis, how my project differs from similar scholarship, my three main themes, the overall significance, and finally the closing remarks. The three main themes in my presentation are divided into ground, air, and belt environments. I categorized the environment into those three themes as they encapsulated the various environmental features that were the most influential on the battle. I have not included every type of example for my paper and have instead focused on the most important elements for this presentation. As you can see from this map, higher ground was a major part of the Battle of the Bulge, in addition to the trees and swamps of the area. The air theme consists primarily of the temperature and the fog, while the belt environment emphasizes roads and signage. By analyzing the effects of the environment on the Battle of the Bulge, it is clear that Germany enjoyed the most advantages. The build-up to the battle in particular favored the Germans, as the Ardennes forest hid the gathering of their forces from Allied aircraft and made it too difficult for ground scouts to approach. This in turn allowed the Germans to launch a surprise assault through the woods on the vulnerable First Army, as shown by the German soldiers in this photo. From there, ground and air conditions protected the Germans from the Allies' greatest advantage, air power, for substantial parts of the battle. However, American forces were quick to utilize the environment to their own advantage and made good use of ground and air conditions to form effective defenses that, when combined with German troubles in navigating the belt environment, halted the German assault by December 27th. More than a month of the battle remained, though, and it was during this time the Germans were able to use the environment's defensive advantages for themselves, while the Allies struggled with the belt environment. As such, environmental conditions favored the Germans overall. While researching the Battle of the Bulge, I found that most scholarship, such as Ted Hartman's Tank Driver and George Neal's Infantry Soldier, treated the environment as just background or an obstacle for the soldiers to overcome. This creates issues as it reduces the importance of the environment's effects on the battle and limits readers' understanding of all the different aspects of the environment that were vital in the fighting. My project addresses this by making the environment the focus of analysis and by examining multiple features of it. Other sources that do discuss the environment at length, such as Stanley Weintraub's 11 Days in December, seen here, and Daryl Reeder's Weaponized Nature, are still limited in their chronological and geographic scope. Oftentimes their focus is only on the first 2 weeks of the battle during the German attack and at regions where the Americans were on the defensive, such as at Bastogne and St. Vith. My project covers all 44 days of the battle and explores multiple regions across the battle site to create a more comprehensive understanding of the environmental effects on the struggle. The most important ground conditions in the Battle of the Bulge consisted of trees, high ground, and swamps. By hiding in the trees during their build-up, as the tank in this photo illustrates, the Germans were able to obtain the element of surprise for the initial attack, allowing them to catch American forces while their defenses were weak. Outnumbered and cut off from any support, thousands of Americans surrendered against the onslaught. However, the German offensive quickly floundered when they came up against American forces that utilized the high ground to set up artillery positions that pummeled approaching Germans. Foxholes concealed in the forest allowed American troops to ambush German forces and provided them with good cover against attack. The forests, swamps, and hills of the region created natural choke points during travel that allowed U.S. forces to hold back numerically superior attackers. Yet once the Allied counterattack began, these same advantages were taken up by the Germans for about 3 times as long as the Americans did. Thus, the features of the environment's ground proved more beneficial to the German effort. Air conditions mostly consisted of fog cover and temperature. At its lowest, the temperature in the Battle of the Bulge was -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Both American and German soldiers lacked proper clothing to fight in those conditions, leaving none with a clear physical advantage. Psychologically, though, the German units were better prepared as many of the units that fought at the Battle of the Bulge, such as the 1st SS Panzer Division, had also fought in the Soviet Union for years. They had experience in coping with the cold and in the horrors it brought, such as blackened fingers and bodies frozen stiff, while American units had no such experience in facing those terrors. The Ardennes forest is known for its winter fog banks that can last for days, a feature the Germans counted on in their battle plan. While German planes were not able to find enemy forces to attack and friendly units to drop supplies to in the fog, such as in the example here, neither were the Allied planes. Since the Allies had thousands more of planes than the Germans, this was a much bigger hindrance to them. For example, on the first clear day, the Allies launched 5,000 sorties, whereas the Germans were only able to launch 1,000. Though intermittent, the fog banks, like here in the photo, proved to be of greater hindrance to the Allies than to the Germans. The area in which the Battle of the Bulge was fought consisted primarily of small communities and farming hamlets. All of the roads connecting them were made of dirt, which created major issues for travel as they frequently became muddy after the snow melted under the intense traffic of the struggle. While this photo is not from the Battle of the Bulge, it shows that even vehicles with treads struggle to move along muddy roads, leaving a majority of wheeled vehicles stuck, holding up traffic. In the Ardennes, the roads were also typically thinner than the ones shown here due to the thick collection of trees, leaving just enough room for one vehicle to travel at a time. The difficulty of the road network slowed the Germans considerably during the initial attack and provided the Allies time to set up their defenses and move in reinforcements. However, the Allies themselves were delayed in moving their forces to attack the Germans, and since they were on the offensive for 3 times as long as the Germans and had more than 100,000 soldiers than the Germans to try and fit through the clogged road networks, they suffered even more difficulties. In addition, the Allies only had a small number of interpreters that could read the collection of French and German road signs or ask locals for directions, slowing their movements. The German troops already spoke German, and many also spoke French from having lived near the border, allowing them to have greater efficiency of movement. German commanders knew the language barrier would be an issue to Allied forces and exploited this by deploying several teams of Germans that spoke English and were disguised in captured American uniforms and vehicles. Their mission was to switch signs and misdirect traffic, causing even more delays for the Allies. Just as with the air conditions, the Allies suffered more trouble with the belt environment than the Germans did. In summary, environmental conditions during the Battle of the Bulge caused more problems for the Allies, and what advantages the environment offered were exploited by the Germans even more. In the top right-hand corner is a German battle flag from World War II, and in the top left is a 1944 American flag, each of which were present in the ground, air, and belt parts of the battle environment. The features of the ground included trees that allowed the Germans to launch a surprise attack and protected them from Allied air attacks. In addition, the forest, hills, and swamps of the area offered excellent defensive conditions that the Germans used for longer than the Allies. Air conditions included cold temperatures that caused equal physical harm to both sides, but caused greater harm to the Allies psychologically due to their inexperience with it. While the fog prevented air attacks and supply drops for both sides, the Allies had far more planes available to them, so this was a much bigger loss of help for them. The bad road conditions of the belt environment also proved to be a greater problem to the Allies as they were on the offensive for longer and had to fit more troops and vehicles onto them. German forces made good use of the roadsides to navigate their way across the battlefield while sabotaging them to slow down Allied forces. When most history scholarship looks at the two images above, their focus is on the armies and the soldiers, but the environmental space around those soldiers is just as important. The significance of my project is that it shows a battle cannot be fully understood without examining all the aspects of an environment and their total effect on the entire battle. In the case of the Battle of the Bulge, most scholarship has only examined limited aspects of the environment and its effect, such as how the cold made the fighting miserable for soldiers and how American troops made good use of the high ground. Such narrow focus gives the impression that the environment in the Battle of the Bulge was tough but overall beneficial force for the Allies. However, by examining all the ground, air, and belt features of the environment over the course of the entire battle, it is clear that the Germans benefited the most overall. Rather than treating the environment as an obstacle that people overcame, I examined the ways in which the environment shaped the course of the entire battle, as it offered chances to surprise the enemy, provided protection, determined how efficient troop movement was, and shaped the condition of soldiers and their equipment. As challenging as the environment in the Battle of the Bulge was, every type of environment has their own unique challenges, all of which need to be carefully analyzed if a battle is to be fully understood. Not to do so runs the risk of downplaying environmental factors on military events and how they are often complicated enough to cut both ways, a lesson the Allies and the Germans learned at great cost in the Battle of the Bulge. The Martisson Memorial, seen here in the top left corner, is a Belgian memorial to the Allied casualties from the Battle of the Bulge. In the shape of stars worn by U.S. troops during the battle, the memorial is a reminder of more than 80,000 casualties the Allies suffered during the battle, almost all of them American. German casualties are also estimated to be approximately 80,000 soldiers, making the Battle of the Bulge the bloodiest fight of the Western Front. The effective use of the environment by Allied forces during the battle proved decisive in preventing a German breakthrough of American lines, but this was done at a much higher cost had the battle taken place elsewhere. Germany knew they were outnumbered and outgunned by the Allies on land and air, so they chose the Ardennes Forest as their battle site despite the difficulties of fighting there, as the Allies would suffer even more difficulties. The Allies thought the problems Germany would face fighting in the Ardennes environment would discourage any attack, failing to consider how the environment could cause even more problems for their own forces, leaving the First Army vulnerable. As Martisson reminds us, the cost of such misconceptions can be high. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you were able to learn something from it, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.